Welcome back, Agriscience students. This week we are going to finish up with animal science and we are going to talk about the digestive system. The thing about the digestive system for livestock is there's a lot of actual different kinds of digestive systems. Well, actually, three. And so every animal doesn't have the same type of digestive system, and that's why certain animals have certain types of diets. So we're going to dive into each different type and talk a little bit about nutrition and why those things are so important. And I really don't know why we have a fancy transition there, but why not? So as far as looking at animal anatomy, we have some animals that are what we call ruminants. And ruminant animals are those that have compartmentalized digestive systems. You may have heard before that cows have four stomachs. Well, they really don't have four stomachs. It's really more of four compartments. And we're looking at animals like cattle, sheep, goats, deer. Llamas have a modified ruminant. Giraffes have a ruminant digestive system. Pretty much any animal that you would see grazing, except horses, theirs is a little different. We'll talk about that later. Are going to be ruminant animals, and more or less they're eating a lot of roughage. So they're eating a lot of hay, they're eating a lot of grasses, and things that their body has to be able to break down. As monogastrics, we as humans cannot actually eat those roughages. Well, we can, but we just can't digest them the way that they can. So the way that their system is set up is basically so that they can eat large amounts of material to fill them up. Because they have such a large digestive system. So there are four different compartments, and you can spend some time checking out this YouTube video down here on the anatomy of animals. This is what the actual digestive system actually looks like. So the largest part of it is going to be what we call the rumen. And so when you go and give goats or cows or something like that hay, they're going to consume large amounts of hay at the time. And once they eat it, it's still bulky in their system. And so that bulky food, as it goes into their system, is going to go into their rumen. Any liquid that they eat is actually going to go into the reticulum. So the solid bulky stuff is going to be here in the rumen, which is the largest of the four compartments, and then the reticulum is going to be where the liquid is going to go. Once it has digested somewhat, it's going to move further in the digestive system. And as it starts to move further in the digestive system, the next place it's going to go is into the omasum, where it continues digestion. And then the abomasum is going to be the fourth compartment of the ruminant digestive system, which is the most closely related to what our stomach looks like. And there's just another kind of up close of that ruminant digestive system. So monogastric animals, which are us, we're humans, and humans have got a monogastric digestive system. Swine also have a monogastric system. Dogs, cats, and it says horses and rabbits, but we'll talk a little bit about how they're a little bit different in just a few minutes. They do have a monogastric system, but they also eat hay, and we're going to talk about how they can actually do that. So these monogastric animals are one compartment stomachs, and so because of that, we can't break down the roughages because when a cow eats hay, it spends a lot of time in that ruminant digestive system, and that digestive system in the different compartments help to break down those roughages, the hay, the grasses, and things like that. We only have the one compartment, and because monogastric animals only have the one compartment, we have to be able to break it down in a relatively short amount of time as compared to those ruminant animals. So we eat what's called concentrates, and so those concentrates are things that we eat in smaller amounts. We cannot eat a giant bale of hay, and so we have to have smaller amounts of food, and your monogastric animals are going to have smaller amounts of food, but they are packed with a punch. They are going to be much higher in nutrients than what those roughages are actually going to be. So I told you I was going to mention horses and rabbits and how they're a little bit different. And they actually can't eat hay, and they have a specialized part that helps them to be able to do that. And so this is just a simple drawing of a human digestive system, and there's nothing in this human digestive system, this monogastric digestive system, that would allow us to be able to eat hay. It's going to be taken into the mouth, go down the esophagus, into the stomach, and then it's going to go into the small intestine, which is here, where those nutrients are going to be absorbed, and then it will eventually go into the large intestine, where mucus will be added and water will be absorbed. But there's this little thing that we have right here. It's an appendix. Also, sometimes you hear appendix and cecum actually interchanged. And let me see, I don't think I have a picture of it. Yes, I do. All right, so rabbits, their cecum is actually functional. Because there's their appendix and there's their cecum, so all of this on us is not actually functional. If this was functional on us, then we could eat hay. It is functional on a horse, and it's functional on a rabbit, on guinea pigs, and other small animals. Now, the interesting thing about these other small animals, not horses, because that would be difficult to imagine them getting into position to do that. But rabbits and guinea pigs and some of these other small animals that can digest fibers actually they practice what's called cecotrophy, and they actually eat their own poop, which I know is nasty. So, every time you think about those cute little guinea pigs and cute little bunnies, they eat their own poop. Typically, they do it at night, and they eat it directly out of the anus as it comes out, and so it is redigested through their body. And so that's how they actually can digest those fibers that they're digesting. They have this functional cecum, and they double digest everything. So yes, I know, kind of nasty, and they look so cute and unassuming, but they do have a nasty little secret. So that's how rabbits and guinea pigs and things like that can digest those roughages. Horses, on the other hand, they just have the functional cecum. They're not eating their poop. And you can see here where they do have a very large cecum as compared to what you saw in that human picture just a little bit ago. So you may or may not have noticed, if you have been around horses, typically whenever you do walk up on a pile of horse manure, I don't know what the best word is to call it, but presents from a horse. If you do walk up on a pile of presents from a horse, there will sometimes still be some hay in it, and that's just because it's not digested as well in a horse as it is in a rabbit or a guinea pig, where it actually is going through the system twice. Poultry is completely different. So anytime you look at birds, their digestive system, they don't have a stomach. So if we're looking at the digestive system of a chicken, you will not find anything in there called a stomach. They don't have teeth, and so all their food is actually going to be swallowed whole. It's going to be stored in this place called a crop, and the crop is basically a pouch that's in their neck, in their neck area, and it's going to stay there until they drink water. Once they drink water, then it's going to move on down into a special organ that's called the gizzard. And some of you may have seen gizzards before, heard of gizzards, eaten gizzards. They are edible. But the gizzard is basically a really tough muscle. And what happens with that tough muscle is the food is actually going to be ground up in that tough organ. Sometimes you probably see chickens pecking along the ground and you think, are they just eating rocks? Are they eating dirt? And actually, yes, they are. If you were to actually look at the inside of a chicken, if you were actually to do a dissection of a chicken and get the gizzard and cut the gizzard open, it would be full of rocks and sand and grit and gravel, because that gizzard actually grinds up the food inside that animal's body. So completely different than anything else. Whereas, with monogastric and ruminant animals, we both chew our food up before we swallow it. Chickens don't do that. And so it doesn't actually get chewed until it gets into their gizzard. And there's not actually teeth in there to do it, but it's grit and gravel that they've swallowed. So the rations for this have to be really high in nutrient value. And these chickens are really, really good at being able to convert food into something that's usable. So whether it be a broiler chicken where we're converting it into muscle for meat, or whether it be a layer chicken where we're converting it into eggs for consumption. And there is a picture of the chicken's digestive tract. They would take in food in their beak. This chicken has no eyes. They take in food in their beak. They're going to swallow it whole. It's going to come down here in their crop. Do have to be very careful not to get an impacted crop with a chicken. If they eat too much and then drink and they eat something that swells inside the crop, it actually can cause what's called an impacted crop, and that can actually kill them. So you have to be careful what you're feeding them, that they're not going to eat something that will swell up and kill them. If you were to feed dry grits or dry rice or something like that to a chicken, it'll swallow it. It will stay in this crop. Once they drink water, it swells up and that crop can burst. So it actually can kill the bird. So you have to be really careful to make sure that you're feeding them things that they're supposed to eat. Then once it goes down from the crop, continues into the proventriculus, which is probably the closest thing that they have to a stomach. Then it's actually going to go into the gizzard, be ground up, and then move into the small intestine and the large intestine. So that's the digestive tract of a chicken or many other types of birds. It's also the reason why when I was a little kid, you'd go to a wedding and people would throw rice at the end of the wedding. And now people do birdseed or bubbles. And the reason is because there were a lot of birds that were dying because of weddings. So be very careful what you throw out to birds, what you feed them, so that you're not going to cause issues with that impacted crop. Let's see. There's our grit and gravel and the gizzard right there. We're going to skip this and go directly into animal nutrition. There are several different nutrients that animals need in order to be able to survive. The most important is going to be water. Your body and other animals' bodies are mostly water. That's the makeup of the majority of the body. And so whenever you're thinking about the importance of water, we're using it for transportation, we're using it for temperature regulation, we're using it to dissolve things, we're using it to dilute things. And so there's a lot of reasons why we use water, and it's important for you to take in a certain amount a day. And it's important for animals to have a fresh supply of water at all times. Proteins are going to build muscle. In the case of monogastric animals, a lot of monogastric animals are actually omnivores, which means they eat plants and meat. Some animals are carnivores and they only eat meat. Some animals are herbivores. And depending on the type of animal that you're talking about, that you're working with, it depends on what kind of diet they have as to what kind of protein you're actually going to feed to them. You got some examples here of different types of protein. Obviously, these are pork chops. This is salmon, eggs. And there's some chicken breasts down here. So those are some of those meat types of protein. But you've also got cheese, which is going to be a byproduct of milk. And you've got milk up here. Nuts, I'm not really sure what that is. What that is a picture of. It kind of looks like cottage cheese, which it could be cottage cheese. Beans and legumes are also going to be a good source of protein. This could be tofu, but usually tofu is not that curdy looking. But tofu is also a good source of protein, which is actually a plant source of protein coming from soybeans. And so all these are going to help to build muscle. Carbohydrates are going to be what helps to give animals their energy. I know in the human world, we kind of, carbohydrates kind of get a bad rap. And the reason is because if you eat too many carbohydrates, then it converts into fat. Carbohydrates and fat are both made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so they're very similar in makeup. And so that's why it's so easy for carbohydrates to actually convert over into fats. So just enough carbohydrates for energy is a good thing, but too many carbohydrates and it could become fat. So that's why some people cut carbs out of their diet, but it is extremely important for animal rations that they have that energy for being able to just do their daily business. Minerals only needed in small amounts. Calcium is going to be a major mineral, and this is extremely important for chickens because it helps them to be able to develop their eggshells. If you've ever seen a chicken that is deficient in calcium, from time to time they can lay soft shell eggs, which is kind of weird looking. But making sure that they're getting enough calcium in their diet is extremely important. Typically, what we do is use a mineral block, and you see a picture of a mineral block up here. We even used mineral wheels for rabbits and guinea pigs and other small animals. This just helps to develop their bones and teeth and other parts of their. It's kind of like a specialty teams whenever you're thinking about sports or something like that. The specialty teams are all going to have a specific job that's very special in what they do. And that's kind of what your minerals are going to do in a diet. And you can do them through blocks, you can do them through loose minerals, or other types of means. Vitamins are typically also going to be needed in small quantities. This helps with a lot of different body functions. As far as even like humans, we've got vitamins A, D, E, and K are the fat soluble vitamins. Vitamin C is going to be one that helps us to remain healthy, help with our immune system. So, as far as right now, with all this pandemic situation going on, a little extra vitamin C is not going to help you. Actually, a lot of experts are also recommending vitamin D right now, and you get vitamin D just by being out in the sunlight. So, a few extra minutes of hanging out in the sun probably would not hurt you either. But vitamins are going to be needed in small amounts. When you were a kid, you might have just taken a little vitamin gummy or something like that. A lot of times with animals, we actually mix it into their water. This would be a water supplement right here that we would actually either mix into their water, and some actually get mixed into foods as well. Fats are needed in small amounts, but you do need a certain amount. I just mentioned that there are some vitamins that are what we call fat soluble vitamins. So, what that means is the only way for you to be able to use a vitamin in your body is for it to dissolve. And so some vitamins will not dissolve in water. And because they won't dissolve in water, then your body can't actually use them if you don't have enough fat in your diet. So vitamins A, D, E, and K are extremely important for your body to be able to work the way that it's supposed to, but you have to have just enough fat in your diet in order to make those vitamins be able to work. So that's one of the purposes of fat. Another purpose is energy. So if you thought that carbohydrates gave you energy and that you may have had a little bit of a sugar high after you've eaten too much candy or something like that with carbohydrates, fats give you even more energy. So if we have an animal that's just not gaining a whole lot of weight, or they're just not doing well, sometimes we'll even add oil to their feed in order to give them that extra boost of energy, to help them gain a little bit of weight and to make them feel a little bit better. So we don't want tremendous amounts of fat, but you do need to have some in the diet in order to make sure that the animal is getting everything that they need. Concentrates, I've already mentioned this very briefly. These are going to be foods that we eat in small amounts, but they pack a punch. They're going to be very high in nutrients. So more or less, it's kind of like the difference between feeding our goats grain, which is going to be something that we feed them in small amounts whenever they're on the milking stand, or we feed them a small amount in a day in a trough, or roughages, which is the hay that we would feed them in very large amounts and pretty much let them eat all they can. If we feed them too many concentrates, it can cause problems with their digestive system. So we don't want to give them too much, but those concentrates are really good because they pack a punch as far as nutrients go. A little bit goes a long way. As far as the roughages, it'll fill you up, but it's not going to give you a tremendous amount of dietary nutrients. But it does help to fill a giant ruminant system. So dry roughage, green roughage. There's also silage. And silage is typically a fermented type of roughage. And usually when you think about silage, you're thinking about something like corn. And so this is basically fermented corn stalks. So just another type of roughage. These are going to be not as high in nutrients, but they're very filling. And this is just a picture of some corn silage right here. It does have a kind of a soury fermented smell to it. A lot of people don't like the smell of silage. Some people do. It's kind of one of those acquired things, I guess, but great for animals. They love it. And this is just a picture here where they're actually fermenting silage out in the field. The chopped up corn stalks would actually be underneath this plastic. It's held down by a tire so that the decomposition process and fermentation process can actually do its thing underneath that tarp right there. And that is it for digestion and nutrition. Next time we will look at some animal tools and their safety or in their uses. And so please ask if you have any questions, and we will be getting back with each other very soon.